I am a combat vet with PTSD. I have a service dog, but know that that dog will most likely not outlive me. The solutions seem morbid. It seems the medicine only postpones the hardship. In the case of survivor's guilt, my dog got cancer, was at the vet today deciding options, put me in a strange perspective on whether this bond is good or bad in the end. One of those, is it really better to have loved and lost things? I suppose. Dog saved my life 5 years ago. Now I cannot save his. If you are virtuous, you do not seek reward. Here's my quandary about your question. Your question touches on mental health and psychoanalysis, and I am not a licensed psychotherapist. And so I have never taken a formal psychology course per se. And so I'm very reluctant to answer your questions directly. I will have something to say about PTSD in a minute because I have it a bit, not very much, but a little bit. And my purpose in this group is to say, number one, I've never had an analysis per se. And what I have found is that through the slings and arrows of my life, when I had Dr. Jung with me, he in effect became my therapist. And I think what happens is that by reading Dr. Jung, you're reading at the archetypal level, which tends to open up the psychoid layer. And about 2 weeks ago in session, I discussed the psychoid layer. So you might want to go back through some of the recent videos and just that discussion. It was in a group meeting like this about 2 weeks ago. If you open up the psychoid layer, which is in the very deep unconscious, then something happens, something mysterious happens that makes you better able to face whatever it is that you have to face. You know, my purpose is just to open Jung's work up to others because he's been so helpful to me. I consider him my therapist, even though he's been dead for over 60 years now. And I can pick up any of his books and I find it very soothing personally. I guess we could have a couple of comments about pets. Obviously, it's very painful when you have a pet, and you know, I think my 3 collies, I had 3 collie dogs, they always were soothing to me and they were good for my mental health. And it was always very painful in the back of my mind to know that they were only going to live for 10 years or 11 years. Average life of a collie is about 10 years. And so, you know, that's kind of the bittersweet of having that pet. But it is life. And there's actually a Buddhist teaching in the my favorite Buddhist teaching, which I sometimes tell, is this. A woman has a 6-month-old baby who has died in her arms, and she goes to see the Buddha. Or she says to the Buddha, please bring my baby back to life. And the Buddha said, well, I will do that if you will bring me a mustard seed from the house in the community that has seen no death. And of course, the woman can't do that. Part of maturity is knowing that we have to live between the two extremes. Scylla and Charybdis are the two extremes in the Odyssey, where the rocks are on both sides and you have to get down the middle. I guess what I would suggest in terms of your pet, your dog, your service dog, is to give him or her as much comfort as you can during her lifetime, knowing that it's probably short. And if you know you've done everything that you can for them to give them as positive a life as possible, then I think you probably will be okay. I'm not saying it's not painful. It is painful to lose a pet. And, I've bawled my eyes out every time I've had to put a pet down, and I've had to do it 3 times. I don't know. Do you have any comments on this, John?
Well, I have a little bit of insight with a friend who is a life coach who deals with soldiers from the war who have PTSD, very bad PTSD, and have had their friends killed around them and that sort of thing, and have been severely injured. And the only thing that I know that the way he approaches it is that it's turning the warrior within oneself to the healer.
Yeah.
So the conversion is from, not that everyone has a warrior archetype, but it's common to soldiers that they have that, and therefore that turning that into a healer archetype is very beneficial for them.
I noticed that Anne Ulanoff, who's emerita professor of psychiatry and religion at Union Theological Seminary, said that there are 3 types of mental health healing. The first type is the type that I discussed in the Buddhist story, which is to show you that you're not alone, that we all suffer this pain, whatever it is, the suffering, because suffering is a part of life. In Buddhism, they say the beauty of birth, the certainty of death, samsara, which is suffering, and karma, which is Buddhist for what goes around comes around. So the story I just told about the Buddha is saying that, we all suffer this pain. Maybe that is a way of healing. The second way is through gaining a religious outlook. And it doesn't mean by any specific creed. It means having a religious experience such that okay? You don't have to believe, And if you haven't read it before, I urge you to go and look for the links to Edward Edinger's talks that are on a variety of videos on this channel. And then the third level is to gain access to the psychoid layer. I'm going to refer you to the talk that I gave on that a couple weeks back. As far as PTSD is concerned, I have a very, very mild form of PTSD. And I know that it is totally intransigent. Okay, there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. And mine emerges every time I hear a helicopter and every time I hear fireworks on the 4th of July or any other day when I hear fireworks. I'm immediately back in Vietnam. There's nothing I can do about that. I immediately flash back when that happens. And I live in Annapolis, Maryland, which has the Naval Academy next to it, so we often have helicopters flying over. So whenever I'm outside and a helicopter flies over, it flashes me back, and that is intransigent. I don't expect it to change in my lifetime. In the case of the fireworks, I simply avoid it. I simply do not go outside for fireworks. If I watch fireworks, I watch it on television. In the case of the helicopter, I say, okay, that's my PTSD coming out. And some things, as Dr. Jung said, some things you don't cure, you just grow out of, or they become less important than other things. And so when I have the helicopter response, I simply say, okay, that's my PTSD coming up, and I'll just put that aside in my psyche. That's the way I do it. But I'm not sure that that would be enough if you have a more serious PTSD. And if that's true, then I urge you to talk to a real mental health professional. As far as the fact that the dog saved your life, that's very meaningful, and you can find ways to memorialize that one way or another. I certainly do it. In fact, I put the photograph of one of my collies as the thumbnail on one of these videos recently.
Too, Skip, just another thought on that is that I know it's a little cliche, but if we stay in touch with our feelings, I think Jung even made a statement about how the importance of that, and that's how we connect with our core self, and that should be practiced, and or feelings written down, feelings described, and
Right.
and that's extremely important for any kind of mental health or soul searching.
I guess I can offer what I think a friend would say to you. Okay, I don't claim that this is mental health advice at all. What I try to put into this YouTube channel is things which I think would help me if I were in a position and help me in some way. What I just put, the link I just put on there, Nick, is the link to the discussion about psychic healing. It happens to be the one that has the image of my collie thumbnail. Even just looking at that image soothes me. Even though he's gone, he still lives in my heart. And I guess that's one way to think about it. I lost my brother 30 years ago. When he was 39 years old, he died, and he was poisoned by, believe it or not, bad water in Vail, Colorado. And he got this amoebic thing called Giardia, I'm not sure how to pronounce it exactly, which exists in the Colorado River. And that's in one summer in 1973, the city of Vail brought untreated water into the water supply of Vail, Colorado, and 300 people that were in Vail for the summer that summer got this amoebic infection, which ultimately ate their livers. It actually was the origin of liver transplants in the United States, because Dr. Thomas Starzl, who pioneered liver transplant in the United States, was at the University of Denver at that time working with pigs. And suddenly he had all these human patients that were coming in. It was such a dire situation that he had to start transplanting. And my brother had, in 1988, it took 15 years for the stuff to eat his liver. Ultimately, he had 3 liver transplants in one summer, and then he died. And so obviously it's very painful to lose a sibling or someone like that. But what I find is that my brother is still with me every bit as much as he ever was. And so is my father, and so is my mother. Even my roommate from the basic school, who was killed in Vietnam on April the 11th, 1969, even he is very close to me still. And, I don't think of him as dead. I think of him as with me. Certainly with that thumbnail of my dog, whose name is Karma, prosaically enough, but Karma saved my life many times, not literally in the sense that your dog may have done, but he certainly kept me exercising every day, and just his way of being in the world, which you can see in that picture, I find very soothing, and he's still with me. And what I can say is that I wish I hadn't had to euthanize him, but I knew that I had to, and it was my mature duty as an adult to take care of that and help him with that. Otherwise, he would have suffered very badly. He didn't know that. He didn't know he was at the end of his life. And so for him, it was just something that happened very quickly. And we can regret we have to do that, but if we're going to be mature adults about it, then we do have to. Thomas says, Asclepius, god of healing, has a dog mixed into his myths. I've had traumatic dreams in which my dog, whose name was also Karma, helped lead me out of dangerous, untenable situations. I wouldn't be surprised at all to hear that. That can come up all the time.